Most unique introduction that I've gotten in my year or so of being secretary, so thank you, Rufus, for that. It's certainly also unique in being in front of a crowd with both my parents as part of the attendees, so that's also a first. But let me just kind of break the ice a little bit. I think back, I was thinking of this as my father was giving my introduction, and nearly, since he was talking about some timelines, nearly 20 years ago, we were both working in insurance, and he shared with me, his, guidance as I was trying to embrace the insurance industry, but just was not meant for me. I decided to pivot and to go into what I thought was my passion, which was politics, and landed an opportunity with the Governor Deval Patrick's administration. But for an insurance guy, this was a huge risk, right? Pivoting in a career. But certainly without taking that risk, I would not be standing here today. So cheers to that. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here on the Cape and to start my day with the Yarmouth Rotary Club. I'll be doing another event later today in Chatham. And I know that it's really a great opportunity to engage with everyone here today, knowing that you're residents on the Cape, you are either active in the business community, you are retired, you're committed to the civic engagement and prosperity of this region, which is so important. So I just want to take some time to share a little bit about what is top of mind for me as Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development, and certainly for Governor Healy and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll as we move into year 2 of our administration, or what I like to call our sophomore year. As we look back on that first year, I know that really out of the gate, standing alongside and following and watching Governor Healy, it was very clear that she is the type of leader that leads with values, and recognizing that we are a commonwealth and we want to make sure that we stay competitive for sure, but at the end of the day, our competitive spirit is really grounded in our values. And so we just keep that in mind as we think about what we're talking about today, which is workforce development. Because when I think about how we can flex our competitive spirit and our competitive advantage as a global leader in innovation and across so many areas, from life sciences and climate change, I know that at the heart of our agenda that will lead us to number one in all things is certainly our people. It's our talent. It's what makes our businesses thrive. It's what makes our communities thrive. And I want to make sure that as I think about our workforce agenda, I stay centered in thinking about our people. And that can be the people that make up the businesses here on the Cape. It can be the people that have not even realized their next shot in what will be an amazing career. Certainly the students, our rising talent who are studying in our K-12 schools like Dennis Yarmouth Regional High School, or Upper Cape, or Cape Cod Tech. And then also our students who are studying in our community colleges like Cape Cod Community College, or our higher ed institutions across the Commonwealth, and our apprenticeship programs, and all these awesome opportunities that are providing pathways for that talent that will fuel our workforce that we need today and certainly for the future. And with that kind of agenda and framing in mind, I also know in order for me to do my job and to do my job well, it takes a collaborative approach to do so. I cannot be an effective Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development for all 351 cities and towns in my office. I have to broker and engage and partner with community partners who are dedicated and on the ground in each of our regions to make sure that I understand what's top of mind for businesses, what are the occupations that are hard to fill, so that we can close the skills gap. I want to make sure that we're engaging with workforce training partners and academia to know that there's capacity and ability to bring people into the classrooms, to think creatively in providing more pipelines and opportunities. So one of those strategies certainly is thinking about deepening engagement with our business community. And before I dive further into how we're doing exactly that, just by a show of hands, who here is familiar with mass hire in our careers. Ooh, I like that. Okay, that's exciting. It's a good thing to know, because Mass Hire is an amazing resource, certainly here in this region, but across every part of the Commonwealth. Mass Hire is our network of regional workforce boards. Kara runs that here on the Cape. We've got our career centers, so there's 16 regional workforce boards, 29 career centers. They're part of our ecosystem within my portfolio, and an extension of really making sure that we drive that local agenda, because they're on the ground engaging with employers, academia, labor, and so many more partners. And it's through that kind of local partnership that we in the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development are able to connect the dots and make sure that we're bridging the gaps to close the skills gap, to bring more resources together, amplify collaboration locally. And because of that kind of collaboration, when we look back on our first year in 2023, we awarded over $900,000 to train and upskill nearly 700 individuals right here on the Cape, as well as on the islands in our first year. And that's just us getting started out of the gate. But in order to do that, we couldn't just throw money out there. We wanted to make sure we were doing it effectively, certainly. And so that's where Mass Hire came into play, teaming up with Cape Cod Regional Technical School and the Workforce Board as examples to tap into a trust fund that we have called the Workforce Competitiveness Trust Fund, which is solely intended to provide training in collaborative consortiums of partners focusing on unemployed and underemployed individuals. And because of those kinds of grants, we were able to help support everything under the sun in the state and here on the Cape, from landscaping to behavioral health. And with that kind of fund, I'll be in Chatham sharing another announcement that's going to impact the Cape in this region, as well as partnerships in other parts of the Commonwealth as well. We also wanted to make sure that as we think about the tools in our toolbox in our first year, we were able to engage with 50 small businesses right here in the region to award what we call express grants through another fund called the Workforce Training Fund, intended to upskill existing workers, people that are already in the workforce, but we want to make sure that they stay competitive with their skills. And the Workforce Training Fund allows that. Employers are already paying into it and can provide it as a resource to really invest in their existing talent, and we help to facilitate that and promote that. And we know it's a great resource from anything from professional development to the industry credentials that are so essential to help a business run, ESOL training, everything that can be really creative to make sure that talent that we need to stay and retain here on the Cape can be competitive. And so as we think about all of this, I want to make sure that as I share kind of my agenda, you also get more familiar with the tools that are in our toolbox. I mentioned now a couple training funds, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about one that I'm especially passionate about, which is registered apprenticeship. Everyone here knows about your plumber, your electrician, your pipe fitter, your iron worker. They created their path to an amazing career with great benefits and a tenure to lift up the workforce that we need, especially in the building trades. That's a proven model. They have gained that skill through something known as registered apprenticeship. Upskilling or providing the skills with that upfront training in the classroom, combined with being on the job site and learning the on-the-job training through a skilled individual already in the trades, right? It's something that we know has worked for nearly a century, if not more. We have tried to innovate here in Massachusetts to take that proven model of registered apprenticeship, knowing how great it has worked for thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs here each and every year in the trades, and expand that to other industries. So think how you can create an electrician through that combined classroom training, on-the-job training. We're doing exactly that to prepare lab technicians in the life sciences, to think about how to prepare early child care providers in the desperately needed child care industry that we have here in Massachusetts, to make it more accessible and affordable. We're taking that model to prepare credit analysts in financial services. Anything that we can get creative with, which you know there's industry recognized credentials, and we can provide upskilling or new skills for people that may not have the skills yet. They can come in day one without even knowing how to code, and then can walk out the door working as a software developer at Wayfair or PTC or any other amazing company that we have headquartered here in Massachusetts. And so we're trying to think creatively, and we're staying competitive in doing that. And I know that when I talk about that kind of tool, I think we're ahead of the game, and we look at other states across the country, and that's something that we're trying to make sure we're ramping up. In fact, in the first year, Governor Healy proposed increasing funds for registered apprenticeship 400%. So now it sounds like a lot. We went from 1 million to nearly 4 million, which was still a huge increase, but something that will help us scale and really help to move the needle and provide more opportunities. And the great thing about registered apprenticeship, and why I think it's even more important, it provides a more even playing field for people who may not have the ease of going back to school, and can provide a free way of getting into a career with great wages, especially as we try to get more women, people of color, individuals with disabilities, veterans, and more into good paying jobs across the Commonwealth. And it's happening right here in the Cape. In November, I was visiting Cape Cod Healthcare to celebrate their first cohort of apprentices in partnership with 1199 SEIU, and that included medical assistants that are working right now at Cape Cod Healthcare, thanks to this kind of innovation and thinking outside of the box. But we also know that we have more work ahead. Workforce development is top of mind when you talk to anybody, whether you're in the business community or you're just thinking about what's going to happen with my children in the future, the students that are in our schools today, and how are we going to make sure that they can not only study here, stay here, and raise a family, or if you're like me, raise a dog. And so that is why we're so keen in making sure that, again, we are leading with collaboration. Every 4 years, Massachusetts has to complete a workforce plan. It's required by the U.S. Department of Labor. It's something that I'm charged with completing, and I'm using this as not only a homework assignment to check off the box for U.S. DOL, but really an opportunity for Governor Healy, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, and our entire administration to articulate our workforce agenda and ensuring that it's really unified. It's a unified approach. It will certainly reflect strategies that I think about each and every day, but we have been very intentional in partnering with Secretary Tutwiler and his team in education, Secretary Walsh and her team in healthcare and human services, including transitional assistance, rehabilitation, and mass abilities, soon to be named, thinking about our individual disabilities, teaming up with our new Secretary for Veteran Services, Secretary Santiago, and thinking of campaigns to make sure that veterans who are still looking for work can find a job here in Massachusetts. And so this is going to be an exciting next step in my portfolio. We had several months underway where we engaged with each of our regional communities, so many different partners from the chambers statewide to our Mass Hire Regional Workforce Board. And in fact, we did a session at Upper Cape last fall as part of this exercise to bring together academia, labor, businesses, and just engaged partners in our workforce region here to map out what is the plan for Cape Cod, and thinking about what are the occupations that employers are seeing that are hard to fill, and how can we, in partnership with the different schools here, in partnership with the training programs, really provide more collaborative pathways to fill opportunities, whether it's in hospitality, healthcare, manufacturing, and more. And so there's a blueprint that will be complementary to this workforce agenda and plan, and a blueprint that will help guide the work ahead here on the Cape. But it's a really great opportunity for us to have kind of a playbook as we think about what's going to be so important to help attract and retain talent over the next several years, what's going to be important to develop talent that we need, and really what's that system infrastructure that will make us stay on top of our game. And when I think about those different pillars, just think about what does that mean, talent attraction. Certainly you can think about ways to recruit talent in the old-fashioned way, but you have to also think about the work supports. We were talking about childcare earlier. We have to make sure that there's infrastructure to allow for someone who's been on the sidelines, been disconnected from the workforce, discouraged, have an ease to get back. And if that's childcare or other caregiving, or if we need to think about stipend programs to provide that last cost to support someone to so they don't have to make a decision on whether they can actually afford transportation to get to training or to afford the rounding out of their rent because they're forfeiting a second job so they can go through job training. We're thinking in that holistic way as we attract talent and retain talent. And then we're also thinking for developing talent, being very intentional with certain populations that we want to make sure we're boosting up in our workforce. From our youth and young adults that are here, that are looking for work and looking for early exposures, from STEM internships to greater opportunities where we know they can tie right into our economy, to our veterans, like I mentioned before, to individuals who are returning after serving as incarcerated individuals, because they deserve a second, third, or even fourth chance, and they have the skills and ability to do so if we do some intentional partnerships. And so we're thinking in that way because we know we're in a very tight labor market, and it's a challenge for sure, but it also opens up an opportunity if we think more inclusively and more intentionally to build the pathways and the opportunities that we know the people who live right here in Massachusetts deserve. And so I'll just close out with a few final thoughts and remarks as we look ahead. We're now in our second month of our sophomore year, and what's ahead. In recent weeks, Governor Healy filed her second budget for our fiscal year 2025. And you'll see in that budget, she's proposing investments certainly in workforce development, but also in areas that intersect to make sure that we are a competitive and inclusive and thriving Commonwealth. So that means, what are we doing for investments in transportation, in climate change, in education, in housing, and building out housing production? All of that is going to be helpful for me because it will make more people want to stay here, live here, and then be part of the jobs that we're creating here. We included greater investments in a early proven program called Mass Reconnect. Show of hands again, who's familiar with Mass Reconnect? All right, you've got a couple. If you're not familiar with it, it's an awesome, and again, thinking outside the box approach to bring more people off the sidelines. So Mass Reconnect was launched last year under Governor Healy's leadership to provide free community college tuition for individuals who are 25 years or older without a degree or without a industry credential, to provide that jump start into our workforce. And so teaming up with Secretary Tutwiler, we know that Mass Reconnect in its early months, it just got instituted in its first semester in September, is proven amazing results for all 15 of our community colleges, including here at Cape Cod Community College. In fact, the 4 Cs saw an enrollment of nearly 50%, I think it was 46% to be exact, just within the uptick in enrollment of getting people into community college. And that uptick is going to lead to an uptick in the workforce that we need. In other areas, you'll see that the governor has proposed continued investments in areas around workforce development, the tools that are so important for our toolbox. But we also, in the last couple of weeks, have been thinking about how can we lead by example, looking inward as an administration. And recently, Governor Healy announced, and through an executive order, that all of our executive departments and agencies will be instituting a skills-based hiring initiative. That means that when we look at the vast majority of jobs, 93% of jobs in the executive branch do not actually require a 4-year degree through the auditing and review that we've provided. And so as a result, why should we require a 4-year degree if it's not the first thing that someone should be looking at? And so instead, we're working with our hiring managers to make sure that they are coached, trained, and prepared to ensure that they're leading with skills first, making sure that as you're looking at someone's resume and recruiting for new talent and thinking about ways to upskill existing talent, you're leading with skills, their knowledge, their abilities, knowing that there's so many more ways to gain the skills that we need and to make sure that we're boosting opportunities for everyone. Certainly a 4-year degree is a path that is going to be great for some, but it's not the solution for everyone, and this skills-based hiring will open a greater funnel of great talent that we need in state government. And I think we're also trying to encourage businesses to join us in doing so as well. I also had the opportunity in recent weeks to join Secretary Tutwiler of Education and Secretary Howe of Economic Development alongside the governor to pursue this whole of government approach as we think about childcare. Certainly, there's a department dedicated to our early childhood education.